Hi, we're back with Chris Contelmo, and we were talking about what life was like in the village, what businesses were there. How did Route 9 is so different today? Tell us about what it was like back then and in the village.
Well, first of all, in the village, we had so many little stores we could go to that we used to not even hardly ever go to Poughkeepsie. We went to Poughkeepsie once a year to shop for school clothes and maybe at the holidays or a nice big treat. But when we were in high school, we'd go to Poughkeepsie a lot for the movies and stuff. But Route 9 was the way it is. You got sections of it that still exist. There's a section of it that exists that runs down from the Odyssey Diner and back of the Odyssey Diner all the way down to Old Hopewell Road. That's the original Route 9. And then again, it becomes the original Route 9 when you get down by, when you go up the hill to N&S Plumbing. That's the original Route 9. It goes up that hill and turns and then comes down. And where it comes down, where Cavassini's was, which is now
The water park, right?
That was now. So those sections of old Route 9 got cut off. So my recollections of old Route 9, there were a lot of places we patronized on old Route 9. There were places to go then. There was an ice cream parlor. It was a Carvel ice cream parlor. It was on the corner of New Hackensack Road and Route 9. That was in the early 50s. And then, of course, there were diners. There was Mike Monak had a diner on the corner where Marty's Diner, where the Dunkin' Donuts is on the corner of New Hackensack Road.
Didn't his parents own a diner, Mike and Grace's?
Mike and Grace's, they owned a restaurant further down Route 9.
Okay.
Mickey Mouse, I'll tell you that one when we get there. I'm riding down Route 9. I'm starting at, I don't know where I'm starting. I'm starting
was the Route 9 when you were by Vassar Road, from Vassar Road south?
It was a two-lane highway.
Two-lane highway, probably very few lights.
Oh, no lights.
No
lights at all. It was a two-lane highway. All the way up to Poughkeepsie, it was a two-lane highway. And then when it, widened, and in some sections maybe they couldn't get the property or something, developed different turns, or they eliminated some turns and hills by going past and cutting them off. But the section I'm most familiar with is this southern section, and those are the two old sections that I know of. I mean, that I can tell you of. But as you went down Route 9 on the side behind Odyssey Diner, there were a couple of bars there, and it was a big garage. It was a trucking company, Dean Trucking, and there was a milk company in a big concrete block building that's still there. That's on the right. And then as you went down where the town now has their dump, they have the town highway department. That was just all woods.
So Route 9 basically turned in where you would go on your way to Evans School. That
was where we would be
Okay.
traveling, yes. Yeah. And as we would travel, there was one bar along that stretch of Route 9 there. Right now, there's a second mall there where Creative Kitchens is. That would have been there.
A lot of bars you're mentioning.
Oh God, yes. And in later years, that one bar, they turned into an auction house. It was called Colonel Irving's Auctions. And they sold,
I remember that.
Do you remember that? Yeah, my mother used to go there and buy the kids' toys. But then as you went further down, then of course where Evans School was just all woods. But then there were houses on the left side. There were mostly houses. There was a gas station belonged to Miller Clearwater. He was married to Mrs. Clearwater, the language teacher at the high school. He had a gas station there. And then when you got to the corner where, right now, where Cablevision is, right next to Cablevision was Oliver Barnowitz auto junkyard with all wrecked autos in there. And on the hill, as you went up the hill, a little repair shop. And then it was a farm, and then it was Midway gas station. It's a stone building behind Toyota.
I think that's still there.
Yeah, that stone building is still there. Maybe Toyota uses it. And then on the corner, there was the big farmhouse that became the Mexican restaurant at El Segundo after a while.
La Fonda del Sol.
Oh, La Fonda del Sol. And
I
then,
think, maybe I'm wrong.
At first it might have been El Segundo, but then, I don't know.
Yeah, that was a hangout, I remember, for a while.
Yeah, and then we got back on the new Route 9. So we traveled the new Route 9 as you went down, which is now the new Route 9, but that was the old one.
Mm-hmm.
And as you went down, there were a lot of little restaurants and bars along there. There were houses along there too, you know. One man had a chicken farm on the left side just before you get to Adams. There was, just before you get to Adams, that section by Adams, that's the old Route 9 also. I forgot to mention
Really
that.
winds.
It did. It went around, it went over there. And they had a chicken farm on the hill there where the Mercedes place is.
Okay.
There was a chicken farm there, and then there was a little restaurant past that called the Bluebird Inn, and that was our favorite place for pizza. My father made pizza in the Bluebird Inn. He taught the man who owned it how to make pizza. And he used to go down with him and work.
I remember hearing stories about the Bluebird Inn.
Bluebird Inn. Yeah, we used to go there for pizza after basketball games. Once we got older and we went driving, we drove places to get our pizzas and stuff. And then as you went on down further, you came to the Mickey Mouse restaurant. That's where, let's see, Hudson Fish and Ribs is.
Okay.
That's the original building. And that belonged to Mike Monak. And one of my best friends in high school her name was Mickey. That's her name. They called her Mickey Monak. And they lived in the house that's connected onto the back where now Hudson Fish and Ribs probably has their kitchens and stuff.
So that was Mike and Grace's?
That was their first restaurant in the area before he opened Mike Steiner up.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That was Mike and Grace's, right. And I went to school with Mickey Monak. And then when you went down further on Route 9, there was a Chef's Inn on the left.
That's where the
lawyers
dentist offices,
lawyers,
right,
yeah,
lawyers now.
are in there. And then you went on down further after that.
I have to tell you, the Chef's Inn,
Yeah.
I think, is where my parents met my husband's parents.
Probably. My
dinner there.
It had changed names. It did become a different name after
Yeah,
a while.
I think
And my
so.
niece had her wedding there. But then when you went down further, the section that is all empty, that is that swampy section,
Mm-hmm.
they used to drill for peat moss or something in
Yes,
there. There always was a big
yes.
crane in
A
there.
big crane.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then you went went up the hill, and there was N&S, that's right where they were, that same location, but that was old Route 9. You came down, and then there was Cavassini's, which now it's Border Park and everything over there, and then the cemetery. And
So
it was the same.
All of you, that really has changed tremendously now, but back in the village, there were lots of different kinds of stores.
Oh, yeah, we had stores.
So that you didn't have to leave.
No, we didn't have
I mean, everything was
Right.
here.
Right. There were 2 department stores in the village. There was Florence Henderson's, which mostly catered to women's wear and children's wear. She was a milliner first. She was a hat designer. There was a lady who worked in there named Mary Smith. I can always remember. She looked, she knew your size. When you got your first bra, she knew which one to get you. She was, she just knew everything. She had a little hand. She had a birth defect, and she would show you the shade of the stocking. She'd put it on her little hand. I can just remember it so well. But we bought a lot of our clothes there, and I bought a lot of clothes even for my daughter there when she was young, because she had lovely children's and women's clothing.
That's when stockings only went up to
Oh,
your
yeah,
thighs.
Right, exactly right, yeah. And you had to choose the right shade, right? And so Florence Henderson's was there, and then as you went down the hill, there was I told you Dr. O'Brien, I mentioned that once before maybe. But then there were shoemakers. There was one on this side of the bridge, and I think there was 2 on the other side. And then there was a
Shoe repairs?
shoe
or?
repair shop.
Okay.
Yeah, shoe repair shops. We called them shoemakers. That was on the corner where the Chinese restaurant is.
Mhm.
And then as you went the next couple stores down, next to that, there was a shoe shop in the 50s for children's shoe store, because I got my boys' shoes there. And then after that, there was Central Hudson, which way back was a hotel, I think.
That was the Rush's Hotel, I think.
Yeah.
The George Rush's
That
Hotel.
was Central Hudson's offices, plumbing. Central Hudson, no, it wasn't. Shaker, Travis, and Quinn. I'm
That's
sorry.
where County Fair is
Right,
now.
Shaker, Travis,
Yes.
and Quinn, which is a plumbing company, that's right. Central Hudson wasn't there. Shaker, Travis, and Quinn. And then there was Amy Silvestri had a produce market. And then after his produce market, they built the Robert Lee store. That's on the corner where
Sweet Or?
the vinyl.
Oh, the vinyl room, okay.
The Robert E. Lee store. It had 2 levels. The lower level was a real 5 and 10 cent store. And then went up 2 stairs, and he sold clothing also.
Oh,
So you could go there and buy a few little things. And then if you went down the street, long before you got to the Sweet Or building, There was a barber shop and a butcher shop.
That's going down Mill Street.
Yeah, Von Borstel's butcher shop. And then there was the Sweet Oar building. And then across from the Sweet Oar building, there was Jenny Stripple's 5 and 10 cent store.
So the Sweet Oar building, Sweet Oar was still in existence.
Oh, the Sweet Oar was in existence until probably the late 50s, maybe early 60s even.
And that's where they made
The blue jeans.
blue jeans
And
and
according
work
to
clothes.
my grandmother worked in the Sweet Oar when she first came to Wappingers Falls as a young girl. She had been a seamstress in New York and Brooklyn in a shirt factory, right near the Triangle Shirt
Wow.
factory that burned down. She was maybe 13 years old. She went to work in Sweet Oar until she got married. And I know many ladies who worked in there, like, older women that were friends of hers.
I remember seeing pictures, maybe postcards of the Sweet Oar building with beautiful window boxes and flowers.
Yes, and
Just-
awnings
yes.
on every window,
Yeah.
It was. They had another Sweet Oar factory in Newburgh that
Yes.
really took off during World
Yes.
War II, making Navy clothes and so forth. But they supposedly were making heavy blue jeans before Levi Strauss.
Yes, that's
Yes.
what we've heard, but there
Because-
was within days
Right,
out
it
west.
was, right, yeah. But a lot of Wappingers people worked in Sweet Oar. And also down at the industrial park. I mean, the industrial park employed, this side of the bridge, most of the people worked in the industries down below, and the industrial park and Sweet Oar. And the other side of the bridge, a lot of them worked at the quarry over at Trap Rock.
On the other side of the bridge?
A lot of people over there drove over to Stony Cove, yeah.
Did the stores along Main Street, did they have like flowers in their window boxes? Was it a much
I don't.
softer look?
I don't recall.
I just remember Sweet Oar.
Sweet Oar was
was
very nice.
really-
Well, there was the fountain, but that fountain disappeared long before I came along, I think.
The fountain in
where
the corner of
horses
Mill Street
Yeah,
and
right, there was a fountain there, so that was kind of a pretty spot there.
wasn't that also like a horse trough?
It was for water for
For the
the horses,
horses,
so
yeah.
that was before I came
Yeah.
along. Cause I came along when the horseless carriage came. When-
You were after the
When they
stagecoaches.
could drive, right. But then on the other side of the street, going down the hill again, there was a couple of insurance companies, and there was an ice cream parlor. Mr. Valenti had an ice cream parlor there. And then the drugstore on the corner where the building that fell down, the Smith building. There was a drugstore there. And then next to that, there was a hardware store across the street by Shaver Travis and Quinn. It was a hardware store. And there was a hardware store on the other side also.
I'm surprised there were so many clothing stores and so many hardware stores that they could all stay in business.
They did. Mr. Winnie's hardware store, he sold chicken feed and grain for the farmers. And I mean, he had a big business. He was my neighbor. We bought our home from him. He developed his farm and built houses on the land, and we bought our home from him. But he invented dried dog food. And he had a little plant down in New Hamburg. He made Calcott, it was called.
Huh.
And we had a dog when we first got married over there on Pine Hills Drive, and we used to buy our dried dog food from Mr. Winnie. We'd go to New Hamburg and get a bag of dog food, yeah. And then there was Rules of Furniture store there, that was along there. And then on the corner was the big A&P. That
Okay,
building burned down. That's the little building with the flag painted.
right, that was a
the Smith
huge
building, I think.
3-story
Oh,
building.
yeah. Most all of the buildings along Main Street had 2 floors above. And that was the Victorian era. Nothing was higher than 3 stories. They didn't
Right.
have the equipment to build them, so that's why everybody, had 2, 3 stories. But on East Main Street, most of them did. And then when you got down to the bottom of the hill, in the middle of the road, see, when the trolley went up, no longer went up. They used to come down there and turn and then go back to Poughkeepsie. But after they took the trolley tracks out, in the middle of the road, they put this big stone, they called it a dummy. I mean, a big square stone, great big heavy concrete stone, just so the cars would stay right and left and not come around that turn and collide.
Okay,
And then in front of Carabello's drugstore, which was the building when you made the turn on your right, it would be if you were heading up East Main. That was Carabello's drugstore, and he had a nice soda fountain in there too, so we used to go there a lot. But in front of there, they had these big
Now, I don't mean to interrupt you,
Right.
but when you say the soda fountain, is this what I am picturing, the big
long
counter
right.
with the
swivel
stools?
stools.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then in the back, he had 3 or 4 booths, and of course the couples would go in the booths. We'd all sit at the counter. But, you know, we bought our makeup in there, you know, and tried on nail polish and lipstick and stuff.
Before you went home.
Yeah, right. And, but they, besides a big dummy in the street, which I can remember, so that you would stay left and right and not hit each other coming down that hill, in front of the drugstore, there were 2 big, long concrete blocks. And they were about maybe 6 feet long, and they were solid concrete, and they were about 2 feet wide. And they put them there because Chip up on time went down that hill with the school bus at that building. So that's why they put those concrete blocks there too.
This is in front of the drugstore.
Right, so and so the bridge gang, all the guys sat on those concrete blocks and just admired the traffic and admired the new cars going by, admired the girls going by. And they called them the Bridge Boys. And most of those Bridge Boys went to World War II, and quite a few of them did not come back. My uncle was one of them. There was the Kaji boy didn't come back, the Tobacco boy didn't come back. I can't remember all of them. But I was little at World War II, but I have a lot of memories of it. But anyway, all the guys used to either sit on the bridge, they'd tice themselves up and sit all along the bridge with dangling feet, or they'd sit on those blocks. I can remember them as a little girl, all those guys sitting along there, you know?
The Bridge Boys.
Yeah, right, the Bridge Boys.
So did the realignment of Route 9, how did that affect the village and the stores there?
Well, the biggest effect was IBM opening. I mean, Route 9 realigning came later anyway, really. I think it came later. It was in the 50s when it was realigned, because I got married in 55, and I was working in Fishkill to Fishkill School, and I would drive old Route 9. And in 1955, in August, we had a hurricane, and we had the most water you ever saw in your life. We had just bought our house, and we walked downstairs and found 18 inches of water. I mean, our yard was a lake. We were like, it was unbelievable. The roads were all flooded. Everything was flooded. The water coming over the bridge, our bridge, the water was the level of the roadbed. That's how high the water was.
This was the hurricane of
August 1955.
55.
And in Red Oak Mills, the water was flowing over the bridge. And in Pleasant Valley, there was a Ford dealership, and they had all the whole used car lot and the new car lot. The cars were all up to their windows, and the cars were all on.
That was the Wappingers Creek, right?
Right, the
That was
Wappingers Creek
up
flood.
there.
And it was a hurricane, I think it was Hurricane Gloria, but I might have the wrong name, I don't know, I can't remember. Because when I drove to Fishkill that day, there's a little stream that goes on old Route 9 behind Nissan. It goes across the road, you don't realize it's there now, but there's a little stream and it had a little tiny bridge. That was so flooded, I couldn't get to Fishkill to go to school that day, to go to work. So it was that bad. So,
But you mentioned IBM, so what
well,
effect
yeah,
did
I'll
that
get back
have?
to that. You said, did the village change because of Route 9? That's how you brought that up. And I don't think it was because Route 9 widened, although it made it easier for us. But I think the biggest change was when IBM came in the late 1948 or 9, when they first opened, and they expanded and started employing. And that was the demise of commercial life in the village.
They took the workers.
Because, first of all, they made it so many people moved in, and the people who moved in didn't come in. People would come in from out of town even to shop here, you know. All the farmers and everybody would come into Wappingers to go shop. It wasn't just the people in the village.
Okay.
So once Route 9 was improved, they could go to Poughkeepsie easily. And once IBM came in, the people from all those outsiders came in and moved into all these developments. They weren't going to come down here. They all scooted. So Route 9 did have a big impact. But the increase in the population, the increase in the population did not help the village. If anything, all the development destroyed the village in a way, because everything just went to, more bigger stores, more choices, better prices. And so all these little stores closed. We still, during the 50s and 60s, we still had the Robert E. Lee. All those stores were still here in the 60s. I shopped in them all the time with my children. And my children were born in 56, 58, and 60.
When did the malls come in? Was that the
The first
70s?
mall we had, well, we had on Route 9, we had Big Scott's, that came, that was a big thing. Oh my God, that was wonderful.
Where was that?
Big Scott's was where Skechers is now. It was a
Okay,
great big store
okay.
there. And then where, this now is going back to like the 60s. Then the 60s over there where, we had a theater over Imperial Plaza. We had a
Imperial
theater.
Plaza.
And then we had, over there we had, there was a women's store.
Grand Union was
The
over
Grand
there.
Union came up, well, the Grand Union first was down where, AutoZone is, it was in that strip mall, first was there. And then it moved over into the Imperial, when Imperial was built. That strip mall was built first, and then Imperial.
Yuri's Hardware.
Yeah, that was in the strip mall. The strip mall came first. The strip mall probably came around 1960, maybe, yeah, around 1960. That strip mall came. Then they started to build strip malls all along, all the strip malls start coming in.
And so it was easier for people who
Yeah,
had
there was
moved in to
and you
go
had-
along Route 9
And to
instead
come
of
into this
coming
little
into
village where you couldn't park your car.
no parking.
And and parking in the village, at that time, we parked facing on the library side of the hill. From the library down to where the Chinese restaurant is, the cars facing in.
Diagonally.
And because it was wide, now they fixed it, so it's not
Oh,
as
that's
wide.
right.
And otherwise, you did the regular parking on the street, But the parking was so poor, and the people wanted better choices, better prices, and so they kept drifting away. We still had a little gift shop. We had the 2, 5, and 10s in the 60s. We had, there was no, I don't think there was a supermarket. I think around 1960, the supermarkets moved out. There was an A&P moved out over here. The A&P was where that strip mall is, where the dry cleaners and the Chinese restaurant and Dollar General is.
Yes.
That strip mall came probably in the early 60s too. And
Well, I
that's
think
where
the malls,
A&P
the
went.
strip malls, or any mall is
Yeah.
the death of a lot
Well,
of
that's
small
what it was,
village
yeah.
stores
And
anywhere.
people want more choices,
Yeah.
and things, so that's what happened. But the village, so with that goes the social life too, in a way, because the people, like at my age, we went out and bought houses outside the village. And so our kids didn't participate in these coastal communal activities. They participated more from school activities. So the social life of the village changed. The firehouses in the village were a big contributor to the social life of the village, going way, way back. They used to put on minstrel shows, and they had all the, I'm not gonna say parades, but they did.
Well, I think our next section, I wanna talk about the firehouses and the carnivals and so forth,
Yeah.
so. Thank you for this, and we are gonna continue on West Main Street.
Okay, here we go.